Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and happy May the 3rd. Yeah, tomorrow's May the 4th, Star Wars Day, so I figure, you know what, this is a good time to maybe watch some cringy Star Wars YouTuber stuff, and I do not normally watch Star Wars Theories content, okay? But this was on my feed or whatever on YouTube, and he was reacting to a Nostalgia Critic video, which I thought was strange. Nostalgia Critic is not exactly the most relevant person in 2025. I know he's still doing his stuff, and I don't know how his channel is doing, but all I know is, 9 years ago, which is when this video was made, by the way, he was a lot more relevant, I think, on the YouTube space. And Theory is reacting to a 9-year-old video that it's Nostalgia Critic talking about 11 good things that he likes about the Star Wars prequels. So he's not someone who likes the prequels, but he's talking about things he does like about them. And Theory kind of explodes in this video. He gets so emotional. It's kind of crazy. And I don't know. It's the most embarrassing thing I've kind of seen in a while. And I just wanted to talk about it. So here we go.
Fulfill your destiny. TheorySabers.com.
And yeah, he started his own Theory Sabers thing, which I don't know, for someone who's put so much negativity into the Star Wars space, it just feels weird that he's still like trying to brand himself all about it, anyways.
Just because a movie or movie series is bad doesn't mean there can't be some good things about it. And when a series has this much money and, dare I say it, even effort thrown into it, it's good to...
Then you will die.
This guy not like the prequels?
Okay, so Theory had no idea what he was getting into when he clicked on this video. I guess he didn't realize what the Nostalgia Critic's whole bit was, which seems weird because Nostalgia Critic's been on YouTube for a very long time. Okay.
It's the vibe I'm getting here.
when that money and effort actually pays off. Are there more good moments than bad? Hell no. But it's only fair when a movie
What?
series, even one as bad as this, doesn't...
Oh, hell no. What?
See, now that's some bullshit.
They're not to be ignored and deserve being paid attention to. And we're gonna look at the top 11 of them here today. Why top 11? Because I like to go one step beyond. That kick-ass sword fight. The fighting in these movies definitely got a lot better when the prequels got started. Even the most intense moments in the original trilogy mostly kept to just two people tapping swords. But the storyline and characters still kept us interested. Well, since there was shit storyline and characters in the first film, they at least made up for it with a pretty cool sword fight. All of this is much better in contrast to the first film.
Okay, so that was Nostalgia Critic's basically point there. It's just that the prequels had better sword fights than the original trilogy. I want you to pay attention to what Theory's argument against... Again, this is a nice thing that Nostalgia Critic is saying. Listen to what Theory says.
Hey, Obi-Wan, remember when we fought in that volcano through a pool of lava and death, surfing on tiny little machines and doing flips and kicks everywhere?
Yup, sure do.
Alright, so the reason there's a major discrepancy between the two fighting scenes is because in the novel for A New Hope, it was explained that both of them were extremely apprehensive of each other because of their battle on Mustafar. Very, very easy logic. So Obi-Wan was extremely apprehensive of Vader because he had grown more powerful, because he had been training, because he had fucking cybernetic limbs. He was taller, bigger, stronger. And Vader was afraid of Obi-Wan because he didn't know if he could still do the same shit that he did to him. I mean, imagine losing all your limbs and being burned alive because of a guy. You're going to take a little more care when you fight him. So there's that. Also in the novelization, which all were signed off by George extremely carefully. Obi-Wan, when fighting Vader, it was described that he was just fucking overwhelmed, beyond overwhelmed, on how powerful and big and strong Vader was, just physically, because of his cybernetics.
Okay, so in reality, not these in-universe explanations, it's because, well, one, they did not have months of choreographed fights in that original movie. Okay, they were kind of just told to, you know, fight with the lightsabers a little bit. And also, David Prowse, he could not see out of that Darth Vader mask very well. Okay, so you had one guy who couldn't see, and they didn't exactly, you know, choreograph a fight there. But, you know, afterwards, and this is what Star Wars always has done, afterwards they'll come out with a book and or novelization or whatever, that kind of retroactively explains away why certain things happened this way, you know, and they fill in holes, they give you context for things that the movie never did, and that's generally what the franchise has been for its entire existence. But Theory is basically he's taking Nostalgia Critic's criticism of the actual movie, just like the fights, and he's trying to wave it away with an in-universe explanation because he read the novels. But here we go.
Just pushing back on him. Like, even the Force wasn't able to really help him, and he had noticed that he had become weak. And that's one of the reasons why he allowed himself to die, because he knew that, all right, he's not going to win. He hasn't trained the way he used to during the prequel trilogy, during the Clone Wars. And
I don't think that's why one allowed himself to die. I mean, he became one with the Force. I'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Like, okay.
He had become, quote unquote, old, meaning, you know, he just hadn't trained.
This is back when Ray Park was in everything. Sleepy Hollow, X-Men, Ballistic.
This is when, like, these people who don't know the lore and don't know stuff, they just watch it from a surface level. You cannot watch Star Wars from a surface level as some sort of a fucking film critic. You need to understand.
What? Okay, yes, you can absolutely watch Star Wars at a surface level as a film critic. Okay, especially if that's kind of what you do, is you criticize films. Star Wars, yes, there's a lot of mythology and a lot of lore you can dive into. You can read all the comics and the books and the video games and all the external materials and the behind the scenes and all that stuff, and that's great. Okay, but they are still movies that a normal movie critic can criticize. Okay, just because you have an in-universe explanation for something doesn't mean that thing isn't still existing in the movie as it is. Okay, so if you're criticizing the fights as how they used to be, it's not like, oh, so now that I know Obi-Wan was afraid of Vader, now it's not a problem anymore. Like, it's okay.
Understand the reasons behind things. You need to understand the characters. It is an extremely community-driven and deep. You need to know deep shit when it comes to Star Wars and the characters, how they think, why they do certain things. Some shit, yeah, you can gloss over, no problem. But Star Wars is that type of franchise.
I would be fascinated to know what he considers stuff you can gloss over. You know, like what is his parameter for, like, oh, you don't need to know that.
At least the first 6 films, not anymore.
Also, it's fascinating that he says only the first 6 films were like this, when the truth is they're still doing this to the sequels, and they're still doing it to the Mandoverse era stuff. And I mean, they just announced a book that's gonna, you know, focus on Finn after the Rise of Skywalker, that I'm sure is gonna fill in even more context and holes that the movies didn't fill in. So Star Wars is still exactly doing the same stuff, but because he doesn't like those movies, he's like, oh, only the first 6 movies did that. Like, what? They're still doing it. They're coming out with books and comics today, but they're not all focused on the parts that he likes. So,
where you need to really know the ins and outs, and that's why there's those books. That's why there's all the, you know, the audio, radio drama. There's all the extra stuff in there that will explain to you why, to the questions that you have, which, like, this guy has.
He kicks some legitimate.
Which novels? It's the novelizations of the films. 6 films, 6 novelizations.
If you couldn't get into the story, at least you could get into the action.
Oh my god, this guy's insufferable.
Number 10.
Just so you know, Nostalgia Critic does hate the sequels too. That's like saying, hey, let's give this guy some credit. He doesn't eat shit. Alright, well, common sense, I guess.
After one movie, he decided to cut.
yeah, so that might give you an idea of how Star Wars Theory feels about the sequels, and it seems impossible for him to grasp that some people out there, especially of just a handful of years older than he is, and I am, by the way. Me and Theory are roughly the same age, I think. Anyways, it seems impossible for him to grasp that there's a whole generation older that feels the same way about the prequels. And that's kind of why Nostalgia Critic made this video, especially 9 years ago. This was, closer to the time when prequel hate and making fun of them was still in its prime, which, if you need no further proof that was how it was in that time, look at the Red Letter Media prequel takedowns that have millions and millions of views. Prequel love is still relatively new, but people like Theory like to pretend not only is that the way it should have always been, but that it's so justified that anyone who didn't feel that way is crazy and wrong, and you just don't know the lore, you just don't understand it, yeah.
Down Jar Jar, arguably a characterized version of syphilis, to a much smaller role. Hell, in the third film, he doesn't even.
So yeah, that's the thing with George, is that when he thinks that a project always needs to be advancing, and so his cut of A New Hope, like I remember when in my interview with Paul Hirsch, who worked on the original trilogy, I think he told us that it was like a museum history of movies or something. They wanted the original A New
It was the Library of Congress.
Hope cells or real or something like that. And you'll have to watch the interview to get the full story, because I can't remember totally, but I remember the gist of it. And George sent them the updated version with all of the new cuts and the new effects, and they were like, "No, George, this is an art museum. Like we need the actual. This is a film history museum. We need the actual original one." He's like, "No, this is the updated one." They're like, "No, but we need the." He's like, "No, this is the final file. This is the new one. This is what you get. This is how it was supposed to be watched." So he's always changing and tinkering things in time, and that's just how George rolls.
Okay, so if you haven't discovered this yet, Star Wars Theory is someone who will defend all of George Lucas's decisions, even the most controversial ones. Back in the day, the idea that you had special editions of things, people despised those. People who were fans of the original trilogy as they were coming out, in 95, I believe, they came out with the special editions of the original trilogy, and a lot of people hated them. There is famously a documentary, The People versus George Lucas, that goes into great lengths talking about this, and it's very well documented how people felt. But again, because people of, admittedly our generation, people who are in their, low to mid 30s now. I'm turning 33 this year, so that gives you an estimate of where I'm at. People in our generation, now that we're like, oh, the things we liked as kids, the prequels, now that the internet at large has flipped on them, and everyone's like, oh yeah, the prequels, they're great. We like to kind of ignore that era of the internet that was roughly 2008, 2009 or so.
Do see him moving big objects around as well as just swinging around the sword. So he's kind of using all his abilities to his effect. Which of course asks the question, why does he need that cane if he's so fit? Why couldn't he just use...
He's conserving his energy. So he conserves his energy, and then when he needs to, he uses the Force to allow his body, which is extremely aged now, to do the things that it does when he fights.
His powers to give his enemies a heart attack. I know, tons and tons of things that don't add up, but still, if it means watching Crouching Tiger...
Just because you don't understand the lore doesn't mean it doesn't add up. It just means you don't know it.
Maybe it's because...
Okay, and so there that is again. Yeah, Yoda uses the cane because in the original trilogy, he was meant to be an old, wise master, and so when they were making the prequels, there was no question of like, yeah, he still has the cane. He uses the cane because he's still really old. Even in the prequels, he's still many hundreds of years old. And then it wasn't until Attack of the Clones when they decided, hey, we want him to have a lightsaber fight because that's never been seen before. They had to basically just do it, right? He still uses the cane, and then when he's not fighting, he doesn't need the cane, and then when he's done, he picks the cane right back up. And of course, later on, they're gonna come up with something in a book where it's like, well, he's using the Force to help his body move, I guess. But I mean, we can be honest about this. He was using a cane because that's how he used it in the original trilogy, and then it wasn't until the second movie they decided they wanted him to fight, so they just had to go with it because they had him use the cane in Phantom Menace. So that's how it is now.
because so many other scenes are devoid of natural human reaction, but I think this shows two thinking people who know this is both a huge joy and a big problem. It's short, it's
These kind of people are the most interesting to speak to because they think they speak with such a high morality. Like,
Nostalgia Critic just gave a compliment to this acting scene. You know, he doesn't love the rest of the acting scene, and they'll show that in a second, but he gave a compliment to that scene and theories like, these kinds of people.
they come from a place of they know all and everyone else is beneath them.
You lack conviction.
They're not open to the fact that their opinion could be objectively wrong or that they don't see something. They always speak as if like what they see is all that there is and there is nothing else that can diffuse. Like, it's always a treat speaking to people like that.
I wish that someone could just repeat those words right to Star Wars Theory's face, because throughout this whole thing, that's exactly how he talks. He talks about everything Nostalgia Critic says, and he generally talks like this all the time. But because he knows so much Star Wars lore, and he's got it all in his brain, and he's read those behind-the-scenes stuff, he acts exactly the way that he just described these other people. It's you, dude. You're talking about yourself.
And they all sound the same. They speak very fast, and they have this like cadence to them. It's like they got a little bit of spit on the corners of their mouth. Like there's always that. It's always the same.
I'm not gonna act like this is a good performance. It's not. It's bland, it's emotionless, every line is completely monotone, but
Supposed to be. He was doing this on purpose so that it would sound like Vader, so that you could have the clear distinction, or that you wouldn't really have much of a distinction between Anakin and Vader.
Yeah, so they're criticizing Hayden's acting, right? And it is a stilted, kind of wooden performance. All right, it is. And yes, he was maybe told to act that way, and maybe even the idea was there that like, oh, because Vader talks like that, you know, you're gonna try to act that way now as Anakin. That doesn't mean just because you can explain it doesn't mean that it's not still there. It is still a very stilted performance. It's very monotone. It's very emotionless, right? And look, I love these films. I don't care if the acting is wonky. I can love these films, watch them over and over again, and I do. But I'm not blind. I recognize, like, yeah, this is pretty stilted and wooden. But that's just what it is. You know, George is generally going for a more Shakespearean thing in the prequels, and everyone kind of talks like they're in a stage play, and that's what he was going for. I think it just shows a certain level of emotional immaturity if you're not able to love something from your childhood, still appreciate it today, you know, make it a large part of your life if you want to, but the inability to take any kind of criticism, the inability to accept that, hey, maybe it's not perfect, maybe there are things that could have been done better as an adult. Like, you can't watch this as an adult and say, like, okay, I can see how this could have been done slightly better, or maybe I would have changed that today. It just seems really insecure, like you're almost embarrassed to still like this thing. You know, like you've attached to this to your own personality so much, it almost feels like you have to defend it so aggressively because you're embarrassed. You're like, no, it's perfect. You just don't get it. You don't understand it. You didn't read the books like I did, you know? And by the way, I'm saying all this as someone who did read the books. I've read all the books. I got the Paul Duncan books over there. I got the Art of books, which he will bring up later in this video. I don't know. This is kind of the vibe that Theory's giving off this entire time. You know, his ego is so big, but his insecurities are also like flashing. They're highlighted here because he's just so like, no, they're perfect. You don't get it. You don't you dare poke holes in my prequels.
So when he speaks, it's supposed to be like that. Also, he's a slave, right? Couldn't really have much of an opinion, especially when he became a Jedi. They were telling him to constantly let go of his emotions, to not have emotions, to not have any sort of emotion whatsoever. Remember how he was when he was 9? Full of emotion, right? And then when he came to the Jedi, they freaking castrated that. literally the point, and he's doing a great job of acting that.
We really gonna blame Samuel L. Jackson for his bland delivery? You think the guy who does this
I have had it with these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane!
is totally at home talking like this?
The oppression of the Sith will never return. You have lost.
It's because he's supposed to be very emotionless, and neutral, and pragmatic. It's the way of the Jedi. Also, he's battling a lot of fucking inner anger. That's why his lightsaber is purple. He has a lot of darkness within him. And
Okay, so again, Theory is using in-universe explanations to explain acting choices, which is a strange move here, because the reason his lightsaber is purple is because Samuel L. Jackson asked George Lucas, and this is literally on video, like we have video of this happening. He just asked George Lucas if he could have a purple one. That's it. That's all it was. The idea that, oh, he's got all this rage and intensity behind his character, and that's why he's acting so stilted, and he's got to like say all of his words very direct and clear, not like a human being would, is because he's got so much anger. It's like, no, that's, I'm sure in a book they've talked about how much anger and, you know, half dark side that Mace Windu uses sometimes, and I know he uses a fighting technique that is closer to the dark side style of fighting. Samuel Jackson just wanted a purple lightsaber. That when they were filming Revenge of the Sith, the idea that he's filled with so much anger because of his dark side connection and his purple lightsaber, that was not being discussed. You know, maybe they said, hey, you're really angry in this moment because you've just caught the Sith Lord. Like, that would make sense. But what Theory's talking about, this weird in-universe explanation, that, come on, man, come on.
and he has to not teeter on that line. He's got to draw it back a bit.
No, it's because I'm so in love with you.
So love has blinded you?
But I'd much rather.
Nah, bro, it's one scene. Like, come on.
It's fascinating that Theory could not defend that scene for some reason. He's like willing to let, probably, you know, admittedly, probably the cringiest part of the movie. He's willing to just like not defend that one at all.
I will do what I must.
Whether teacher, student, young or old, the spirit of Obi-Wan is definitely strong in this one.
So uncivilized.
Yeah, I think it, and nobody really had a problem with Ewan McGregor.
The Emperor.
No.
Okay, taking out some of his goofier moments near the end, the Emperor was the only thing in all the movies.
I don't know why he calls him goofy. I mean, imagine hiding your personality.
He called it goofy because of the segment he just showed. He just showed where he's like, no, you will die. Like, look, some of the acting choices were goofy. Okay, he's trying to be sinister, but he went like, no. Like, it was funny. Okay, like, again, Theory, he cannot take anything as like, oh, it was kind of a funny, memeable moment, which is kind of interesting that he can't take anything as a joke with the prequels, because, you know, in large parts, the redemption of the prequels in the eyes of the internet were because they were so memeable for a time. If you go back to, 2012, 2014, the memes of Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones, but, you know, especially Revenge of the Sith, a lot of the memes were starting to come along, and you would see those everywhere. I mean, we even go into your GIFs right now of your iPhone. Type in the GIFs of Star Wars prequels or memes or whatever. You're gonna see just hundreds, right? And because the prequels were so memeified, people were willing to kind of poke fun at them, but also still enjoy them. That is why the internet's kind of largely flipped, and now we all kind of appreciate the prequels, right? But it's only because we were willing to kind of laugh at them first. You know, it went from essentially the red letter media style, like, oh, we're tearing these things apart critically, you know, which, by the way, again, this Nostalgia Critic video that he's watching is a 9-year-old video. So it was actually around the time of the red letter media stuff happening, right? So it went from the prequels suck and they're horrible and we're gonna tear these down on a critical, you know, analysis level, and then it went to the prequels are kind of funny and memeable. Let's just put a bunch of GIFs and a bunch of little memes and just funny moments that we remember from the movies, right? And now it went from that to, hey, we actually do appreciate the prequels. We love them. We watched them when we were kids. And now that generation, the 30-year-olds like me, are the main players on, social networks, right? So Theory is like, for some reason, like, no, I'm not going to laugh about this. It's all serious. There's explanations for everything. If you just know the lore. He can't even admit that, like, he can't even admit that that's goofy. It's just a funny moment.
Lady behind a mask for decades, and finally you can release. I mean, it's like holding in a a load for decades, and then finally you're about to pop live.
What? Did he just say it was like Palpatine was holding in a load for decades and he's about to pop? What the fuck?
Action catching a troll. A troll reply is this right here. Oh, I'm afraid that the Deflector shield will be quite operational when your friends arrive. Just fucking trolling the shit out of Luke. Who's worried about his friends?
Because nothing in the original Star Wars was paying homage to anything else. Yes, it'd be better if the people in the world
I was fucking mad. I'm 77, dude.
gave it more of a personality.
Definitely
like in the
took
original,
inspiration
but
from some
you
other
still gotta
movies.
give credit to the-
Because it was a crawl.
But the original Star
Well, that was a crawl, I believe, from Flash Gordon, which, yeah, was a huge inspiration. What is he saying?
Wars, while many would agree is still a strong mythos, mostly stuck to its own story. We get a hint about Obi-Wan's past, but it's more of quick exposition.
Literally talking about the Clone Wars. You fought in the Clone Wars? Literally, like, giving a history right there, which then spawned 3.
Nostalgia Critic is talking about how Star Wars didn't typically dive deep into lore in the movies. You know, they gave you small hints. This discussion of the Clone Wars, as Theory is pointing out, that didn't lead anywhere for decades and decades. So at the time when the movies were coming out, which is, again, that's what Nostalgia Critic's talking about, they were just small little mentions of like, hey, yeah, there was something called the Clone Wars, you know, and that's pretty much all you get. You don't, you know, it's not until the 90s when some of the books tried to explore them, and then obviously the prequels when we got a more concrete understanding of what was happening. But Theory doesn't take it that way.
Films.
One that has its roots in legend and may or may not have happened.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis?
Right, but this pertains to what Anakin wants to do and how it plays into him.
Nostalgia Critic is talking about how this scene in Revenge of the Sith is giving actual like mythology to Star Wars. You know, because normally when we watch Star Wars, like that is the mythology because it happened a long time ago, but it's basically just showing that like, yeah, even within that universe, there are older stories that even they, you know, at least the Jedi don't know if they actually happen or not. Like they're older myths, right? That's all Nostalgia Critic is talking about, how there was like a decent amount of world building being done in certain parts of the prequels, like that part. That's what he's trying to say, Theory.
Needing more power, and the fact that he learned from Plagueis, who could save people, well, manipulate life, I suppose, which falls into what Anakin wants, which is to save his wife from dying. But in the first 3 films, 4, 5, and 6, there wasn't any need for some sort of a fictitious what if, you know, fantasy, folklore, mythological scenario, because it was about the last hope, you know? Luke Skywalker becoming a Jedi to face the ultimate evil that is Vader and the Emperor. That was it. That was all.
Whole world and its mythos it creates to a completely different realm that the previous Star Wars movies never touched upon. It gave us a parable.
So, in a video I have coming out tomorrow, Ian McDiarmid, which you guys told me about, just actually revealed in an interview that there was supposed to be a show all about Darth Plagueis, which would have been literally a prequel to the prequels.
It's the first time not only did these prequels add something new, but it evolved Star Wars to a different level. Even if it is just one scene, even if it's not very long, it added a story within a story.
But you don't need to, why do you need to do that? Because it...
Okay, again, this is a list of things that Nostalgia Critic likes about the prequels. And Theory's asking, why do you need to do that? What? He's just talking about things he likes that they did. What?
Builds a world within the world. I mean, are you not doing it already with the story that you're telling and going to different worlds and focusing on the main plot? How about, like, did he miss the whole mythological part about there is a chosen one? There's a prophecy of a chosen one?
But they never... Oh my god. The movies never really dive deep into where did the prophecy come from? Who wrote it? When did they start talking about this? Did anyone ever even tell Anakin that, you know, like, other than Obi-Wan telling him when he's on fire, did Anakin know that he was supposed to be the chosen one? The movies never say that. It's not until later, other context, the Clone Wars TV show, the books, that we fill in any of those gaps. Okay? We're just talking about the movies here.
And literally the whole thing, like the whole plan was deviated to fulfill this mythical made-up prophecy that may or may not be true, which later on in the third, a prophecy misread could have been. Is this dude just... Wait, is he not paying attention?
No, I think you're not paying attention. I feel like you're missing what he's talking about entirely. Yeah, okay.
And that's one of the biggest steps to making a world you want to feel more real be all the more believable. It's the first time the Star Wars prequels actually evolved the story.
How about the fact that Shmi explains that there was no father?
Okay, oh my god. I'm just gonna let it play.
That's an interesting bit of mythology right there. How about that?
To a better place than where the original Star Wars...
This is what happens when you get surface level people that have an IQ slightly higher than the average population, which is very, very, very easy to do, but also speak in a very authoritative...
What? When you get surface level people who have a slightly higher IQ than most of the population, which is very easy to do. Is that what he said? Is that what he said right there? Okay, let's see where he's going with this.
Tone, as if they know what they're talking about, and there is no other possible option or anything else to look out for. And therefore, it amasses a lot of the low IQ people that are like, oh, wow, okay, easily brainwashed. Like, oh, shit, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Oh, my God. Okay. So, Star Wars Theory, of course, is someone who has... He doesn't... Oh, my God. He doesn't have any perspective. Like, he doesn't understand that he's talking about himself. He's talking about his own followers. If you go into any Star Wars Theory video, the large majority of the comments are people who just agree with whatever he says, or just take any kind of lore dump that he does a video on as fact. Oh my god. He has no self-awareness. Zero self-awareness, this guy.
Just because it sounds like they're just following a bigger sheep.
It's you! You're the sheep!
That's all. You can't watch Star Wars surface level.
Yes, you can.
And you can't review Star Wars as a surface level reviewer. I don't care how great of a reviewer you are. If you haven't done your due diligence in not only watching the films...
Okay. And this is pretty much the thing that he's repeated this several times now. But yeah, Theory is under the belief that you cannot properly critique Star Wars movies unless you've done all the homework. You gotta read the comics and the games and the shows and the books and the behind the scenes books and the art of books. You have to know all this stuff in order to properly review them as an actual Star Wars critic, which is ridiculous. Look, we can love this stuff. I'm surrounded by dozens and dozens of action figures, Star Wars stuff all around me. I know you guys can't see it, but the idea that we have to pretend that these are not just movies, the idea that these are our sacred texts and they come with all this other lore, and if you don't know the lore, if you don't understand it, then you can't critique it. The prequels are perfect if you understand everything about them. It's such a child thing to say. It's such a goddamn. This guy's like a 12-year-old. This guy's like an actual middle schooler. He has no self-awareness. He doesn't realize that he just described himself and his own audience. He doesn't understand that. And he believes that unless you have, this lore, this certain level of lore, then you can't properly critique these things because you don't know why his acting was that way. You don't know why the sword fights were that way. It's ridiculous.
Many times. Reading the novels of the movies, reading the novels in between the movies, doing the behind-the-scenes research, reading The Art of Revenge of the Sith, The Art of Attack of the Clones, the making... And
by the way, I just want to make this clear. I have read these books. I own these books. I own, like the one that's on screen now, I own this book. It's sitting on a bookshelf way back there. I've read these things. I know all the behind-the-scenes stuff. There's nothing theories ever said that I didn't already know from just other external sources, you know? But to be so fucking childish, to be like, unless you know this stuff, you can't critique this stuff. You just don't get it. You have to have read this book. These books and all these external materials are only there for nerds like us who... You know, we're so fascinated with this world that we want more answers than the movies gave us. That doesn't mean that people can't critique the fact that the movies didn't give us these answers. That... Oh my god. Alright, let's keep going.
Of The Phantom Menace, you're not gonna get the fucking full picture.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
You'll just be surface level, and that's why you'll have all these questions. Surprised that this even got 29,000 likes and 1.6k dislikes. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Star Wars Theory is confused why this video has so many likes and why nobody in that comment section is like pushing back. You know, despite the fact, again, this is a 9-year-old video that was made during the peak of genuine like prequel hate and harsh critique. So, you know, even besides that, he's so confused why it's got so many likes. Well, guy, it's because Star Wars Theory, your channel is so big and your ego is so big that you're in this giant bubble and you don't even really realize it. You talk with people and your comments are filled with people who agree with you already and parrot your talking points and have your opinions already. Like, go on any of your videos about the Acolyte, right? Just... He is incapable of grasping the amount of people who are still there, that are from the older generation who despise the prequels. You know, like, he's like, no, they were wrong. They were always wrong. In fact, most of them don't actually feel that way. It was just a handful of loud people, you know, and then he sees evidence of all the likes. He's like, I don't understand it.
Strong stands out, it's still worthy to draw attention to it and acknowledge what was closer to the right direction. At the very least,
the right direction. I love that. Creator creates something in his vision. Surface level guy comes in and tells him what the right direction is.
I'm a nostalgia critic guy, remember? So you don't have to.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. Thanks for the recommendation to watch that video.
Anyways, yeah, this was just a... If you ever wanted to watch a video that kind of shows how weirdly egotistical this guy can be while also being very not self-aware, he doesn't understand the way that he talks. He'll describe people and then doesn't realize he's talking about himself. He talks with like such authority because I know all the lore and I know all this. And yeah, he talks as if he's better than what he calls surface level critiques, and like their critiques don't matter because they don't get the lore. And look, I'm not sitting here like defending Doug Walker, Nostalgia Critic. I understand that that has its own whole controversy that happened. That's like a whole subject on its own. But my point is, Star Wars Theory is an embarrassing person. The fact that this is the guy that a lot of people think about, you know, your general audiences or whatever you want to call them, your normal average person, when they think Star Wars YouTuber or anyone on the internet personality that is based on Star Wars, that's generally the person that people think of, or at the very least that's what Google results will show you, right? And it's, I don't know, it's embarrassing, it's kind of frustrating, but also it's just, he really is like the Joe Rogan of Star Wars YouTubers. You know, he's this childish man baby, you know, who has no self-awareness, doesn't understand, like, he doesn't understand why people make fun of him. He doesn't understand why people critique the things that he says. This guy got bullied from reacting to Andor. Like, he can't react to the new season of Andor because everyone in the comment sections was just making fun of him, and he didn't understand it. He didn't get it. So instead of, you know, trying to get it and trying to understand what people were making fun of him about, he just gave up. He's like, well, fine, I don't need to watch Andor then, right? Which, okay, whatever. I don't know, guys. Anyways, look, May the 4th is tomorrow. We're gonna get, was it Tales of the Underworld? So we're gonna have something new. I'm probably gonna watch the whole thing and just review it all in one video. I guess I could probably divide it in two, because we're gonna have a Cad Bane and an Asajj Ventress. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll divide it in two. I haven't decided yet. But, anyways, happy May the 3rd for you guys. And, yeah, let me know what you guys think about Star Wars Theory. See you guys later. Bye.